You're listening to So You Want to Start a Business podcast, and I am your host, Ingrid Thompson. I'm the author of the business book with the same name as this podcast, So You Want to Start a Business, available wherever you like to buy your books. My guest today is Dr. Artika Tyner, who is a human rights lawyer, and she's with us on the podcast today because she also runs an amazing bookshop and publishing business called Planting People Growing Justice. As a regular listener, you know that one of the most rewarding aspects of this podcast is the amazing businesswomen we get a chance to meet and chat with, people that we might never have the opportunity to meet except for this podcast. It is such a privilege, and I am so grateful to them. If you're new to this podcast, hello and welcome. Thank you for being here, for spending your precious time with me and my guests. I know there's a lot of podcasts out there to choose between, so I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm Ingrid Thompson, and this is my podcast, So You Want to Start a Business. Business, and especially the financial side of business, has become overcomplicated. I aim to simplify it. My business is healthynumbers.com.au, and I am on a mission to help business owners understand how money works in their business, because I truly believe everyone deserves to be financially savvy when it comes to understanding how money works in business and in life. In this podcast, we meet business owners and we delve into their business wisdom and their lessons learned to debunk common myths and to give you tangible and tactical tools and tips to help you grow your own business. I wrote the book, So You Want to Start a Business, to help you understand business fundamentals and find your level of financial safety through building a business. This book is the only advertising on this podcast. There's no pesky interruptions. Pretty much every day, someone somewhere in the world buys a copy. So thank you if you have bought a copy for yourself or for a friend or for a colleague. To find your copy of So You Want to Start a Business, head to your local independent bookseller. We love our independents, or wherever you buy your books online. All right, enough from me now. Let's listen to Dr. Artika telling us about her publishing company, her bookstore, and all that she is doing to inspire, uplift, and create change in real time. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and here we are today with Dr. Artika Tyner. Hello, Dr. Artika. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Honored to be here with you today.
Indeed. Thank you. Now, let's start. Where in the world are you right now?
I am in the land of 10,000 lakes. I'm in Minnesota. So I'm in the United States, upper Midwest.
Upper Midwest. And it's still Sunday afternoon where you are, and it's Monday morning here. So we're into another week already. Okay, so Dr. Artika, tell us, what business are you in? How do you describe your business?
My business is a bookstore and publishing house called Planting People Growing Justice Press and Bookstore. We're a Black-owned woman business that focuses on ensuring that we are increasing the diversity and representation in children's books and books more broadly in general. So helping to inspire people to read, helping to inspire them to invest in their leadership development one book at a time.
Oh, I just love that. I grew up with books. My mother was a librarian, but even before that, we grew up with books, and they certainly have been my savior. You escape into a book in a way that you just don't, I think, escape into other things, or for me anyway. So, and we've never had a bookstore owner on the show before, so I'm really excited to talk to you about this. So when did you start this business?
We started the business in 2017 with the goal in mind initially of increasing diversity, specifically in children's books, ensuring that after seeing the data, we knew that it was critically important to make sure that we had representation of the changing cultural landscape of the world. So it gave us a chance to celebrate the beauty of diversity and inspire young people to embrace it at a young age.
So important, so important. And why did you want to start a business? Like I can hear the mission of the business there about increasing the diversity for children and the understanding. But for you yourself, what was it that you wanted from the business?
I wanted was, one, like you, I have that love of books and reading. I found my favorite place, my happy place is always a library. So books were a part of my life. You see, I'm surrounded by books. But the reality of it is that I knew it was a business that we had to have in our community. In our community in particular, I was born and raised in the historic Rondo community. And just a little bit about Rondo, it is an African-American community that was displaced in the 1960s with the onset of our interstate and freeway system in the United States. We are not alone. There are nearly 1,000 cases of racial removal across the US. It meant that many people with the power of the Constitution and eminent domain lost their homes, lost their businesses. At the peak, there were over 400 Black-owned businesses in our community, everything from the doctor's office to the co-op, all Black-owned. Fast forward to today, there's roughly only about a dozen businesses. But the reason why I bring this up is because I'm from a family of entrepreneurs. And I learned from a young age as a little girl, when you see a problem, you create a solution. So when I saw the children's books, the reality of it is, you're more likely to see a children's book on the cover of having a Black bear or a Black dog than a Black girl or a Black boy. So it was an opportunity, not just about creating a business, but truly what we created is a social enterprise. Because with the proceeds from the sales of all of our books, we donate back to our foundation. And the work of our foundation is to make sure that children in need get access to books as well, that cost is not a barrier. So when I think about business and the why and the how, for me, it was because of my Rondo roots and knowing the power of business to manifest social change. And also that piece of seeing a problem. When I grew up, there weren't books that represented me. So now it was an opportunity to develop a solution where children can see on the front cover of the book, throughout the pages, mirrors of themselves.
Yeah, and we know that if you cannot see it, you cannot be it. I know that's such a cliched expression, but if you don't have the role models there, whatever that role model is, we just don't imagine ourselves being it if we don't see it, unless, a very small spark of people might. But so thank you so much for what you're doing in the world. And what a wonderful foundation to start this business, to really bring it together. So this is one of my favorite questions in the interview, in the conversation, is like, when was that business real? Was there a moment, 2017, so you've had a few years, so chances are there's an answer to this, and maybe more than one, but what's that, oh my gosh, this business is real moment for you?
I think there were a few, but the main ones were related to the experience of young people. When I received, probably about a year ago, a message from a father, and he had purchased our justice book. And one of the things that he talked about is his daughter hugged the book and said, "Daddy, that's me." I knew at that point that we were able to inspire, uplift, and create change in real time. I think the other pieces were just simply, for the books, being an inspiration and a catalyst for change, whether it's for our Fortune 500 companies, on being able to train and teach about leadership, about social change, about inclusion in the workplace. What does it look like, of gender equity, all those pieces. So when we receive those major orders from corporations, that's a reminder that we're planting those seeds in social change in a wide variety of different places to be able to reap that harvest of justice and freedom. So those are the real moments for me.
Yeah, it's so true. Even just as you say that, as the child hugging the book and saying, "Daddy, that's me." My early books were Pippi Longstocking, and she was by herself, and her father sailed the seas, and I don't know where her mother was, and she was this independent person who used to carry her horse around, and she was strong and she was feisty. And so, I look at, how did I end up the way I am? And one of my other was and I know there's not a lot of diversity in terms of ethnicity in this, but certainly in terms of the strength of women, was the naughtiest girl in the school with Enid Blyton. And, she was in boarding school, and she was always climbing out the window and doing pranks. And not that I ever climbed out a window or did planks, but is that sort of that idea of being able to be independent and not conforming and to question things. And, it's so important at that early age to plant those seeds, isn't it? Just for people to see what they potentially can be. All right, so a bookstore is a big operation. Did you start small? Who were the early customers? Tell us a bit about your growth story, please.
So we got started with pop-up shops. It was an opportunity for us to reach out to the community in meaningful ways. We set up pop-up shops wherever we could go, at those cultural festivals, at our jazz fest, musical festivals. We started off with just the few first books that we had published, and continued to grow the number of books that we had available to sell directly to the community, while also raising awareness and education about many of the challenges that surround literacy. In the US, 1 in 4 children are not reading at grade level by 4th grade. If you're not reading at grade level by 4th grade, you're 4 times more likely to drop out of school. And if you drop out of school, you're 3.5 times more likely to enter into that tangled web of mass incarceration or to be arrested in your lifetime. For us, it wasn't just about selling books alone, it was about increasing literacy and engagement.
Yeah, that's so amazing, isn't it? Gosh, there's so much to talk about just in what you've said there. So we've just had a series of programs on one of our SBS. It's one of our government stations. It's funded by government and it has advertising as well. And they've just done a series about literacy. And nearly half the population of Australia has low literacy levels. Like for a country like ours, it's just astounding. And it's a combination of people who, like you said, get to 4th grade and they don't have the level of reading. But it's also immigrant people who don't have levels of English literacy and, being able to read bus timetables, being able to read the internet, being able to fill in forms, it just debilitates people in such a strong way. And so for you to have those first few books and to really encourage reading at an early age is so important. So tell me, do you sell other books now as well as the ones you publish, or are you still only selling the books that you publish?
We also sell other books in addition to our books because our goal is to make sure that we are reaching readers at all reading levels, as you're describing, that we're also not just reaching the children, but their parents as well and the broader community.
Yeah. So how do you, tell us right now, so if anybody's interested in buying books from you and exploring your range, where is the best place to find you? I'm guessing you're on the social media platforms. I mean, I've seen your contact details, but tell us as we're listening where somebody could go right now if they want to see your books, if they want to get some books for their children, for their families.
Yes, you can purchase our books in quite a few different places. You can purchase them on bookshop.com, also on Amazon. And in addition to, you can go to our online bookstore. So our bookstore can be reached either on Facebook at PPGJ Books or at bit.ly, bit.ly/PPGJ Books.
So it's PPGJ.
Yes, for Planting People, Growing Justice Books.
Planting People, Growing Justice Books. There we go. So people out there, if you're listening and you want to have a look at the books, you want to check out the titles and the content, let's go there. And Facebook as well in there. And all the links are in the show notes. Okay, so how do you get new customers? So when we start a business, whether it's a service business, and yours is a sort of a combination of service and physical items, how do you get new customers? What would you say to somebody, from your experience, how do you get new customers?
From my experience, getting new customers has come from word of mouth. We share about our books, we share about our resources wherever we are. Whether it's at church, at school, at the beauty salon, at the car wash, every place that I go and every member of our team, we're building relationships because the books are an important part of our work, of course, because that's how we generate revenue to continue the work, but also to raise awareness about the literacy crisis that we have here in America. Yeah. It's an opportunity for us to radically transform our educational experiences in book deserts in real time. So really our secret to success has been word of mouth and community partnerships.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, it's so true, isn't it? That word of mouth and just creating the relationships. Can you talk a little bit more about community partnerships? Who have you, you mentioned earlier about selling books into corporates and things. Tell us a little bit about those partnerships, please.
Those partnerships have emerged organically in many ways, that people have connected to that mission of change, that mission of access and equity. So for example, our physical bookstore is sponsored by a community partnership. We work with an organization called Gideon CC. So it was an opportunity to connect with an existing organization that was just getting started as well. And they wanted to be able to create a community hub and gathering space within a barbershop. So that meant then having an opportunity to really live out that buy local, buy from diverse businesses in tangible ways. So our bookstore is within that community hub, which made a lot of sense for our business model. We're a small team. a nimble operation with those types of ambitions that will take us to the sky and beyond. But the reality of it was we just didn't have the capacity to physically start and run a bookstore on our own. But in partnership, we were able to achieve the goal in real time.
Yeah, that community hub idea and having all the different sort of businesses together in one place for people to come to. It's so very powerful, isn't it? Tell us about financial viability, because money is one of the things I'm interested in. So you know, obviously you need to buy the books, or perhaps you get them on consignment and then you sell them and you have to post them if you're posting. And how did you work through the notion of financial viability for this business? How did you know that it was going to make money? Like you said, you have to make money in order to be able to do the change work, the access, to do the work that you're doing around the literacy crisis. How did you figure out the pricing and the financial model for your business?
The first step is to recognize that a business is not a hobby. So I had to reconcile that in my mind, to understand that I had to generate revenue to keep the business going and to be able to embark on our charitable efforts. So with that being said, that was a bit of a cultural shift, because in many ways, the idea of money and generating revenue is not something that I grew up accustomed to having a conversation about. And the importance of making sure that the business lasts for generations to come meant that we had to have a very sound strategy in mind from the onset. So with that being said, financial viability meant, that's why I described starting our pop-up shops with just, for instance, our books, because that way we already had produced them. We had purchased a larger print run, so that gave us opportunity to generate more revenue. You also mentioned it as well. Consignment has helped us. That way we're not paying all the overhead initially. We can sell the books on consignment and generate revenue in real time. In addition to that, it became that we also needed another source of revenue in addition to the book sales, which includes our educational services. So we also do author visits in schools. We do author visits at libraries, and we've used that platform around discussing our books, sharing information and knowledge to also generate revenue to sustain our operations.
Yeah, it's a powerful way, isn't it, to generate revenue for that. Fabulous. Did you receive funding from any external bodies? I know you said Gideon CC, helped you, with the venue, but do you receive funding from anybody?
Initially, no. We received a glimpse of hope from the American Small Business Championship Award that's sponsored by Sam's Club and Walmart. We were named an American Small Business Champion in 2017. So in the early stages of setting up our business enterprise. And what that provided for us is also a mentor through what is called the SCORE program. So our SCORE mentor, Mr. Leon, has been indispensable to our success. He's helped us to set up the financial and accounting systems, the marketing systems. So all those pieces, I would say the training that we received from the SCORE mentorship program, and when we went in for our, receiving our award in Texas for this full 2 days of training as well, really laid the foundation for us on how to take our business to scale.
Yeah. So we're just talking about mentors and coaches. How absolutely vital is it? It sounds like your business really got its foundations through having the mentor. Talk a little bit about how important that is for somebody getting started in business to find the right mentor.
It's essential. Finding the right mentor means that you'll have access to the information, resources, and tools that can serve as your key to success. So when I think about the power of having our mentor early on, it helped us to, for instance, think about our marketing, helped us to challenge us to think about our pricing and our consignment model. Some of the things that I talked about, those all came from those meetings with our mentors. The same way they say, the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, it also takes a village to raise a community and a small business. So it took a number of mentors. I have another mentor that has worked in publishing for a number of years. So he helped me to think about, the design of our books, to understand the actual costs and how we generate revenue. I had another mentor who's retired that ran a bookstore for over 30 years.
Yes.
So he
Yes.
gave me a sense of inventory, setup. So all those pieces, I think it's a sense of that African proverb, if we want to go further, faster, it's in the direction where we all go together.
I love that. I love that. Say that again, please. If we go
further, faster. It's a notion that we only can do that if we go together.
If we go together. And I love what you said about having a mentor who had a bookshop, and having a mentor who had, run an inventory and who knew how to do the, that specific part of the business. Because, I have a friend who runs a bookshop, and, I'm fascinated about the nuances of running a bookshop as compared to any other business. And, the gift that you have of having those people with that level of expertise in what you're doing really does make a difference to the success for your business, doesn't it?
It does. And then you can also anticipate the blind spots, the roadblocks, but you also get the recipe for success in many ways. Because I remember, let me just be, fully transparent for everyone that's listening. My first initial thought was, go buy a commercial building and turn it into a bookstore. And my mentor said, that sounds wonderful. What's your plan after that? I don't know, but at least I created and I took the first step. And my mentor was actually the person who told me that's a wonderful step, but not your first step. How about you test the market? And I'm grateful for this conversation we had in 2017. Test the market and find, and notice what my mentor said, find those community partners who are retailers that will help support you in selling your books. I said, come again? Find the retail partners that will help me. And that's how we got started. Fast forward to today, we have 17 retail partners across the nation. So if you're thinking about the financial viability or sustainability, it's not just linked to one sole location, it's linked to 17.
Yeah. And it would be so wonderful to get a building and make it into a bookshop, but the financial burden, and I'm going to use that word, of that building would be onerous, to beyond belief, really, for somebody getting started, wouldn't it?
Agreed. And especially if you think about just centrally where we're located in the historic Rondo community, so many of the buildings, I didn't even think that far, would need large scale investment to make sure these historical buildings could fit the capacity of a bookstore as well. So my mentor gave me those words of advice, pearls of wisdom in real time, and in fact yielded a greater return on the limited resources that we had by focusing on getting to know our customer, getting to know our marketing plans, and building a curated book list to target our customer base.
Yeah, and based on the conversations you're having at the pop-ups and with the community, to find out what are the books that they're looking for and what books will make the most difference for them. So important, isn't it? Let's have some reflection questions. And you've been doing some of that with us, with the guidance of your mentor. But if you could take a magic wand, and I'm guessing you probably don't believe in them, but if you could, and go back, and I know we learn the lessons, but what might you have done differently? Because it sounds like you've got really great, sage wisdom all the way through. But is there something you would have done completely differently if you could go back and do it again?
If I could go back and do it again, I would have invested more money on the front end on our online bookstore. Thank goodness my mentor anticipated thinking about that early on, probably around 2019.
Yes.
But if we did not have an online presence, we would have potentially lost any viability over the past couple of years with the novel pandemic. And we couldn't, because of the restrictions, the lockdowns, we couldn't do pop-up shops anymore. We would have had zero revenue basically for the past year and a half. So with that being said, I would tell myself with that magic wand, and I will tell everyone else, this is a piece of advice that I received from Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter and Square. He talked about, full disclosure, I was always nervous around technology. I'd be hesitant of what could go wrong. My students oftentimes said, can we buy you a new cell phone? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, no one has a flip phone anymore. So you can tell I was quite behind in technology. Despite all the books that I've written and everything else, I had used my computer basically like a typewriter.
Yeah.
So here it is. I was not cognizant of the need to know that it was important to reach my customers on social media and to reach them through an interactive, functionable online bookstore. So I would tell everyone to lean into technology. So going back to the lesson that I learned from Jack Dorsey, he was the one that said, because I just assumed he grew up with a computer in his hand. I mean, he was born and someone sat a computer on his lap. But the reality of it was, he said, no, he found his love for technology by figuring out how technology could solve problems in real time.
Yes.
And so since that experience of learning more about technology, hearing those, once again, those sage words from Jack Dorsey, it gave me a clear sense that we must lean into technology to create access and to create opportunities to engage with our customers on a 24/7, 365 model.
Absolutely. And, you know, I love that about using technology to solve problems in real time, because it could be very easy to just see technology as, you know, like just for the sake of it. But, you know, when you say that, you, thank goodness you did in 2019 get yourself started, because you had it established then when things changed as they did in 2020. So yeah, it would have been quite a scramble to have been trying to get yourself sorted out through that as well. So yeah, to just get into the technology and get yourself set up as quickly as you can, and make use of the technology to solve the problem that you're trying to solve, as opposed to just signing up for all the technology. I think that's the distinction you're making there that's so important, is to like really look at what do you need technology to do in your business, and what technology do you need to best serve the people that you're working with and that you're solving a problem for. I think that's what's so important. Would you add anything to that?
I would say it's an ongoing learning process. So be comfortable and finding, even with technology, where are your strengths? For me, I'm good at Instagram. So I enjoy using Instagram. And now I'm getting better at Twitter and Facebook. But find where your strengths naturally are, maximize that, and make a commitment to grow in your tech skills each and every day.
Yes, yes. Just out of curiosity, do you find that with your Instagram and the social medias that takes traffic to the bookstore, or how do you see the position of something like Instagram for your business?
Instagram helps to build brand awareness. So as we look at the analytics, yes, it takes folks both to the bookstore, and in addition to the website for our foundation for the nonprofit as well. Instagram also helps you create relationships. Those short 1-minute videos, people get used to hearing my voice, not just as someone who owns a bookstore and publishing company, but also as an author, also as a civil rights attorney. So they're starting to hear and get a personality behind the work as well. So I think it's critically important is people buy an experience. So they get a chance to experience me, to experience the other authors, to hear from us, to relate to us in ways that you only can do that if we're in person. And of course, we can't reach everyone in person, but I can say the social media can be that great equalizer if used properly.
It sure can. It sure can. And I'm going to encourage everyone to go to the Instagram, because it is quite fabulous, isn't it? Now, as a book nerd, I'm going to ask you, what are your favorite books? What are your favorite, and this is a question without notice, and I know it's probably like children, you're not allowed to have favorites, but if you're thinking about a book for a little one, for a little person, what's your favorite book? And then what's your favorite teen? And then is it fair to ask you your favorite adult book?
Favorite. Oh, pressure's up. I can tell you what I'm reading, and that can give you a sense of the type of books that I like.
Okay. So, but you just give us some of what's in your bookshelf as the precious ones, or that you're working with right now. Yeah.
Yes, I'm currently working with and really enjoying Amanda Gorman's book called Change Sings. We know her as the a poet laureate that spoke during the inauguration for
Yes.
President Biden. Millions
Yes.
tuned in to hear her voice. And
Yes.
Change Things gives young people the purpose and direction to know that they can be impactful and they can make a difference. If I think about the books that inspired me personally as a teenager, because I know you're mentioning teenage, young adult books, I've
Yeah.
always been the type that I enjoy nonfiction. I love those biographies of those sheroes that have come ahead of me. So I try to read everything I can about Fannie Lou Hamer and her work around access to voting rights for people of color. I try to read everything I can about Ida B. Wells. So I love those leadership biographies. So I
Yes.
think I've read them all so far about Nelson Mandela as well.
Indeed, indeed. And for little people?
For little people. I'm thinking some of my favorites. Oh my goodness. I love this new one called, it's just a couple years old now. It's called Grandma's Purse. It brought back such fond memories. So that's one of the top ones that's on my top book list because it brought back those fun days of spending time with grandma. You didn't know if you'd get a little mint in there, if she had a little book in there. The purse was so big there, everything was in there. So I like that book. And the part that I love about the design, it's designed to look like a purse. So I like to share that one with young people of that experience of what's in grandma's purse, that mystery.
Yeah, that is such. Thank you so much, and they were without notice, so it's wonderful to have those, and I'll put those in the show notes for anybody. But I must say that Change Things certainly sounds like something that we'd all be really beneficial to read right now. So, oh look, we could talk all day about business and books, and I know that we need to draw this to a close. So as we do, so the people listening are either thinking about a business or in the early days of their business or interested in how they can grow and build their businesses more successfully. What would you leave us with, please, as we draw this to a close?
I would leave you with a reminder that your business is as strong as your partnerships. Oftentimes the nature of business, or depending on which culture you're in, is about competition. The reality of it is, I was taught since I was a young girl that your gifts make room for you. So turn that bit of a competition into how do we complete each other? For instance, clearly as a civil rights attorney, human rights attorney, I'm working on issues that relate to social change. There's no competition on how do we address illiteracy or the criminal justice system. There's room for everyone to roll up their sleeves and get involved. But that's not just true for social change. That's true for business as well. It's figuring out what is your unique niche, leveraging your strengths in meaningful ways, but how can you do that in collaborations with others in some sustainable ways? So when I think about even the community hub that we're part of at Gideon CC, it's everything from restaurants, the barbershop, to marketing, to music, to the arts. Why? Because then we can complement each other around a shared mission of community building. But at the same time, for instance, if I'm doing a author event, someone says who should cater it? Oh, I know who the caterer should be. If someone else says they want arts and entertainment, I know who the artist should be. So the collaboration is something that's powerful for the entire community. So changing that idea of competing against each other to completing each other.
Yeah, I love that. That is a beautiful, beautiful place to finish with. I appreciate this conversation so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what an interview. What an amazing woman. What is your standout from this conversation? Here's a few of mine. I love where she says, when you see a problem, find a solution. And one of my favorite admissions from Dr. Artika is when she said that she dreamt of buying a building and opening a bookstore. And then when her mentor said, and what is step 2? She hadn't really thought about that. It's so honest of her to say that, but it's so true of so many people getting into business. They get that idea, they have the initial first steps, and they haven't really thought through what else. I did find it interesting that she referred to Jack Dorsey, who is the co-founder of both Twitter and Square, and she said she imagined that he, of course, had been born with a computer virtually on his lap. And in fact, it would be easy to believe that, wouldn't it? And that she said she was inspired that he found his love of technology by figuring out how technology could solve problems in real time. And that goes absolutely back to her whole ethos about when you see a problem, find a solution. And Dr. Artika's mission is super clear. It's not about selling books alone. It's about increasing literacy and engagement. And she talked a lot about community and partnerships.
And she said there at the end, your business is as strong as your partnerships, and that business is often seen as competition. And so she suggested that she prefers to think about how we can complete each other versus how we can compete against each other. I thought that was really quite magical. And when it comes to growing literacy and solving human rights matters, there is no competition. There is room for everybody to roll up the sleeves and get involved. And I'm grateful to Dr. Artika for her time and her generosity in this conversation. Her final suggestion to us is again back to technology. Lean into the technology to create access and opportunity to connect with customers 24/7. Make use of the technology to solve a problem. What do we need technology to solve our problems? And this is an ongoing process. Make a commitment to and find where your strengths lie. That's it for another episode from me, and thanks again so much to Dr. Artika. When we pursue business and entrepreneurship based on core values and deepest integrity, and at the same time build a financially successful business, we live richer, fuller lives. As I always like to ask you at this point in the podcast, what action are you inspired to take today? Till the next time, thanks for listening.